Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a bonus episode. It's me, Jack, this time hosting with...
Could I?
There we go. See, you're way better at this than I am.
Of course I am.
So, in this video, we're going to be talking about the X-Men in the MCU and how I think they should be brought in, or my ideas for how they should introduce them. If you haven't seen Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, or Wandavision, don't watch, because I will spoil all three of those things heavily.
There's nothing worse than someone spoiling things.
It's just a little disclaimer. Although when you've seen them, please come back.
Oh yeah, please do come back.
I'd like
It'll
you
be
to come
really
back
cool.
because we need the views. But also I want to make clear before we start. In the time between me writing this and I was recording it, it's been announced, I guess, that Marvel Studios is officially working on the X-Men, and that the alleged title is The Mutants. Just throw that in there.
Sounds spicy. Absolutely.
Just so
spicy.
I don't get anyone telling me I didn't talk about it. We don't know anything above that, so there's no details on what it's going to be about, which is good because it doesn't ruin my entire theory.
No, watch after this. You'll find out that someone's released, the plot or who's going to be starring in it.
The second we finish this, yeah. God, that'll be horrible.
We'll be so far behind. We'll have to catch up on the next week. Be like, oh my gosh, another disclaimer, guys.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, so I guess we just jump into this, right?
Yeah, we'll just jump into it. You're the one with most of the theories today, so I'm basically
I've got a few pages, but yeah. So my beginnings of this, I want to establish the mutants to have existed in the MCU the entire time, especially because I think characters like Magneto and Wolverine, part of what makes them interesting is their history.
Right.
And I know the MCU are probably going to just have them appear new. They're probably going to be recent additions, but I think I've thought of a way to sort of work them into the past without breaking the entire timeline of the MCU.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with Wolverine. And so I should probably open with how the X gene works, or how I think the X gene should work in the MCU. So, obviously, there's a set group of people who have the dormant X gene in them, and the way I think it should be triggered in the MCU is it's triggered through a traumatic event in your life. So the trauma obviously causes the powers to emerge, and that's how. And obviously, because a lot of the characters in the X-Men universe, a lot of their powers come from traumatic events. Obviously, Wolverine and Magneto kind of being the two prime examples. So I think it should work like that, and it also stops it from being, if it's a puberty thing like it is in the comics and in the Fox films, then it stops it from just having 100,000 mutants pop up all the time.
Which wouldn't be ideal.
Yeah, but if it's a traumatic thing, you can kind of keep to a small number, which the smaller the number, the easier it is to kind of explain whether or not they're in big key events.
Yeah.
So that's my basic sort of idea. And we're going to start with Wolverine. So Wolverine is obviously a few hundred years old, and his story starts the same as I think it does in most of his origins. Is that he's a kid at home, and as a child he's a traumatic event. This being his dad tries to kill his mum for whatever reason I can't remember off the top of my head, but basically in that traumatic event his X gene activates.
It emerges.
It does its thing. That's the word, yeah. And then he pops his... You're going to hate me for this, but he pops his bone claws. And so he has the bone claws and he kills his dad in the fit of rage, and that's the emergence of Wolverine.
Right.
He then obviously leaves. He runs away. And for the next sort of few decades, he grows up and he ends up moving to Japan. And my idea is that through sort of around the mid-1800s till the 1940s, Wolverine lives in Japan as a myth. So he sort of lives quite feral, off the grid. No one knows who he is, but in Japan he's kind of almost like a whisper. He's this mythical creature that when bad people come into town, he kills them, which is why he surrounds a town in the middle of the rural areas of Japan, and they're like, well, when anyone bad comes in, and hunters and stuff come in, they mysteriously go missing, and the idea is he's spent hundreds of years in Japan basically killing bad guys in secret and keeping people safe.
would he
more
have
animals,
like
I think, than
as a certain whisperer? Do you reckon he would end up having a nickname or something, or was it literally just be Wolverine? Do you think?
I don't think Wolverine would be his nickname. I mean, if you're going to call him Wolverine, you could call him Wolverine in Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so Wolverine's in Japan, and the locals could give him a nickname, sort of akin. Maybe he's called like Hunter or something.
Okay.
That equivalent of a Japanese. Obviously, because he's in Japan, they wouldn't call him the English version, but yeah. So he's sort of got this nickname, and you sort of this. Whenever people come to town, they're kind of told the story of this alleged creature, because you don't know he's a human, obviously, because he's like been feral, so he's all hairy and, you know, looks like a bear essentially.
Yeah.
And so it's like this legend of this: if you go into the woods and if you try and hunt animals, or if you try and kill a person, he'll take you and you'll just never be seen again. Maybe like the myth's kind of gone over, so over years it's become like, oh, he eats people and so on and so forth, which obviously he doesn't.
Oh, it kind of sounds like some kind of like Jack the Ripper kind of. I don't know if you've seen like quite a number of other shows where they'll be like, "Oh, have you ever heard of like this wolf or something like that?"
It's like this. It's like this. It's like this mythical creature, and it's like you don't go past a certain point because he will kill you. And like maybe the villagers have to give him almost like not sacrifices. Like they put like alcohol and food and stuff on like the edge of his territory.
Do you reckon?
Yeah. Oh no, to keep him protecting them. It's like that's sort of like the unwritten agreement of like he stays as long as they provide him with food and drink and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's kind of like the agreement of like he protects him as long as they give him stuff to live. So even though he can live without it, but it's like, kind of this.
Sorry, I'm just like I'm picking again.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing if there were any tourists or people that weren't meant to be there, then he'd be at like the locals' beck and call, essentially.
Basically, yeah, he's like the local protector.
Okay.
And he's there to like protect people and stuff. But yeah, so he's sort of around there. That's what he does in Japan. Right. And in the 1940s, obviously with World War II, World War II kicks off. He's in Japan at that time. He doesn't fight in World War II, but he's kind of around during that time. And around sort of the end of the war, he's in Hiroshima because obviously he hears about the war and he hears about all these bad things.
Yeah.
So he's almost drawn to it. And he's at Hiroshima, and when this is very similar to the 2013 Wolverine film, as you've probably gathered.
Yeah.
But the idea is that he's in Hiroshima, and there's this. I could make up the idea of there's like this boy he grew up in the village he protects, and maybe that boy's like the only one who's seen him, or girl, or whatever, but more likely a boy because it's the 40s. There's like a boy who went over the line accidentally when he was young, and ran into the Wolverine, who obviously didn't kill him because he's a child. Yeah. Obviously showing he has a moral compass, even though he's basically this just creature, and that he kind of almost takes a liking to the child in the sense that he wants to protect the kid. So when he finds that the kid goes to a war, he sort of, because obviously he has great tracking skills as part of his abilities. Mm-hmm. So he's following the kid, and he basically follows him to Hiroshima, where the bomb drops, and he saves the kid. But when he saves the kid, obviously he gets burnt up and stuff, and because his healing factor isn't as good as it is because he's only had the initial traumatic event create his powers and not the supercharging,
right?
Which I haven't explained yet, but I will get to. And so he's sort of out. He's taken a bomb to the back. He's burnt up. He's going to take a while to recover.
Right.
So the U.S. Marines come in, or the U.S. soldiers come in. I don't think that happened in World War II, but we're going to say that like a group of American soldiers came in. Maybe one of them had been to Japan before and had heard these rumors of this Wolverine, but had come to Japan and found this kid who was alive, and they kill him. They shoot him in the head, and he dies. And they take Wolverine because there's this guy who's clearly breathing but has taken a bomb. So they take him, and this kid's dead. So then they take him to the US, and he heals up. And what they do while he's out, as he's healing, they put the adamantium into him. Yeah. And obviously then it creates his metal claws, and he's just, he becomes Wolverine. They give him the nickname Wolverine. And so now he's part of the US government, or the US military, I guess. Against his will, obviously. At the same time in the 40s, in Germany, in Poland, there's the young boy, Eric Lancashire. I can never say Magneto's last name, but Magneto. Eric something. I forget his last name, but Magneto. So Magneto's in Auschwitz as he is in the comics.
Okay.
As a young boy, and while he's in Auschwitz, one day he stumbles across this testing facility. He sees these lab tests, and they have the cube. Obviously, because they would have had it around the 1940s with Red Skull having it. You could have Red Skull there showing off the cube, and they're talking about it, and he sees it, and they catch him seeing it. He runs away and escapes, thinking he's okay. He isn't, obviously. Now, there's also, I want to integrate some other things from the comics. So, like, there's from the Magneto comic from a few years ago, there's a part about him and his friends as kids, and how one of them, they steal food from like Nazi officers, and one of them gets captured and won't give up the names of who they are initially, and then they tell the young boy, and he's like 6 or 7. And they say, you can go home if you tell us who else was with you. He obviously gives the names away. Oh no, I think he gives away the name of one of the kids, but not Eric. And then the kid's killed. And obviously they find the other kid and kill him too. I kind of include that. I want to kind of show that, like, Auschwitz is a horrible place, obviously, and that's sort of how it's shaping Magneto as a young boy.
Yeah.
So he's seeing it. So obviously, especially when you meet Charles, you can understand that Magneto obviously has a warped perspective of people, and obviously has a clear disdain for people in authority,
right,
and humans in general. So basically they catch him seeing the cube. He tries to escape. They find him, and they take him out to kill his mum in front of him. Oh no, they go to kill the two of them. They take them out as part of like the group of people they take to kill in the pit. So they take him. Maybe they do it outside the fence. I'm obviously taking a lot of like things from the comics and some stuff from the X-Men, the old X-Men films. That's going to happen when you set them in a lot of similar places.
Yeah.
But so they go to take him out to kill him and his mum, and so they put a bullet in his mum's head. They kill her. Obviously, this traumatic seeing his mum die in front of him is like, hurts, and obviously emerges his X gene. So the guy gets to put a bullet in the back of his head, and as the bullet comes out the gun, he catches it.
Oh my gosh!
So it like stops midair in between the gun and his head.
Right.
And then it bounces back into the gun, blows up the gun, and like the guy like blows back. He like falls back. Then obviously the kid emerges, and because he doesn't know how to control it, it just sort of goes haywire. So like all the guns just get like thrown, and he and like all like the pins they have on their their arm, on their costume, on their outfits, come up and like stab them. Like one of them comes up and goes through all their necks and kills them.
Yeah.
The idea is he kills these soldiers like when his powers emerge. But I thought it was a cool idea to have the bullet be caught. Like he pulls the trigger and the bullet gets caught halfway. And then so he kills these soldiers as his powers emerge using his abilities. And so he now exists in Auschwitz as the superpowered kid. The Nazi scientists take him, obviously, and start experimenting on him. Obviously, he just killed like 5 grown men without even lifting a finger.
Yeah.
So he goes around. So they're testing on him, and I don't know whether to introduce the cube and have them charge his powers now, or if I have it like they use a little bit of it to see what it does.
Where do you think? So have you weighed the possibilities of what would happen if the cube was used, earlier on, or versus how it'd be used afterwards? Like, have you ever thought like there might be 2 alternative storylines if that were to be possible? Like, one for using it then or using it slightly now.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
So, like you said, if they kind of use the cube for the boy now, like as in early on right now fully, don't you think it would take a different path as to whether they used it like only slightly there and then? Or do you think it would just, either way, you would end up still with the same theory and the same story that you have in mind?
No, I think it would change depending on how they use it with Magneto as a child. I think once he's killed the soldiers and they take an experiment on him, I think they'd put him within a certain distance of it and not realise it. It just sort of, like, comes in a certain contact. Only a little bit of energy comes off it, obviously.
Yeah.
So a little bit of energy, and then it obviously makes his powers really strong for a second.
Right.
And they sort of realise, like, it makes him stronger. But it takes them years to realise that happens to everyone. Or maybe they don't want to push it because they're like, this kid could be strong enough to kill all of us. And maybe they try and manipulate him, but he's very clear and he wants to kill all of them.
Yeah.
So they give him a little bit of the cube to see what he does. He goes berserk and like nearly kills everyone. but it knocks him out. So the idea is he can extend himself to a certain point. So he can comfortably like move guns and manipulate bullets and stuff. But if you push him too far, like if he moves a vehicle or if he like tries to do multiple things at once, his brain can't handle it. And so it like knocks him out for a while. So it's kind of like give and take. So he can do so like he can like pick up a tank and crush it, but it'd knock him out for 2 to 3 days because just the expense on his brain. A bit like in like Chronicle and stuff and other telekinesis things, and where like it's like a muscle, you push too far and it starts to break. So he can only do so much, obviously, which limits his power. So he doesn't just kill everyone, and why he wouldn't pop up sooner.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously then, same thing with Wolverine. End of the war comes, they liberate the camp, the Allies come and liberate the camp. They find Magneto, this kid who has superpowers. They take him similarly to Logan.
Right.
So they've got both these people in. And they're the first two initially. There will be other mutants. An example, I'm trying to think of ones on the spot, because they were kind of the two I focused on.
Yeah.
And like the rest of them don't really matter. So like you have like I'd say about 5 you can find. They don't really matter because they'll probably die anyway. So let's say like 3 others are maybe like allied ones. So like maybe there's a Russian kid, and maybe that could be. I want to say Colossus, but I want to use Colossus later on for other things. So you could maybe use someone like Colossus. Let me have a quick look. I really didn't think about the other 3. I just focused on Magneto's getting his powers and Logan getting his powers.
Fair enough. I mean, like, when you focus on 2, it kind of expands as well into, different storylines and stuff that you could build.
Yeah. I do think that shot of Magneto catching the bullet was cool.
Yeah.
Like, he's mum down, it sets him off, and I thought that was a cool idea.
No, that definitely sounds like a good idea to kind of, like, implement as well. And cinematically, it just looks so good.
Yeah, I just think the shock on them as they watch the bullet just hover there in midair. And then he pushes it. I just think it was cool. I don't know how he's going to kill the soldiers exactly. I kind of thought of the one guy getting his, like, the gun blows up. But I assume he just killed them. Either he just gets all the bullet. They try and shoot him with the bullets, and he catches them and then flips them around and kills them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's more of like a detail than an overall thing.
Yeah.
Alright, I found a list of Russian superheroes. Right, let's just we'll use Omega Red. Omega Red's a mutant, so we could say Omega Red, who's a Russian mutant. You could just say he's on the team. I'll make up some backstory about him later, and then like a couple other ones. Maybe there's an American one, who like triggered when he was out fighting in like France or something, and there's a third one from wherever. Could be British, could be anything. Just so there's 3 other mutants, but the main 2 are Magneto and Wolverine are the 2 we need to focus on.
Okay.
And the idea with them is they collect them all, and they give them almost a little bit of power. So Logan gets his adamant claws. Magneto sort of they don't have the cube, but they sort of are able to. They send him mostly on stealth missions, because obviously he can sneak up behind someone and like kill them without them knowing. Like you can pull fillings out of your mouth, and you can make them choke on him.
Mm-hmm. And
stuff like that. So he's good for stealth missions, the same as Wolverine. But the idea with the characters, they're all built. The entire team they work out is built, so that they can all, as contingencies, so they can all kill each other if need be.
Right.
So if one of them goes rogue, then another one could kill them. So for like from like the late 40s till like now, or around 2015, 2016, they've just kind of been active as like a really deep classified part of the military where they just get sent on missions to go and kill people and stuff. That's just really they're basically just a covert military group. And so they fight in like the Korean War, and they fight in the Vietnam War, and they fight in the Iraq War, and they're just kind of sent throughout time. They're just there all the time, killing people and stuff. And like as much as they don't, I think Magneto's into it because he's kind of like he's got that hatred for people, so he's fine with killing whoever. He basically turned into a living weapon. They just point him at someone and he kills them. Logan's kind of the same. he doesn't quite know about the kid. He knows the kid's dead, but he doesn't know that the US soldiers killed him. So that's kind of how they keep him on their side, sort of making him believe it was someone else. And yeah, so they just do that for like 40 years. I thought of a cool idea around like at one point, because you kind of got to sort of put in the seeds of them going rogue eventually.
Okay.
So like I was thinking, one of the missions, maybe around the Vietnam War era, Magneto finds a child, and he's like saves the child from the village, and he wants to take the child with them to keep it safe, keep them safe.
Yeah.
And obviously the military are like, you're not doing that. We're not letting you have a kid. And they kill the kid, and obviously sets Magneto off, and he tries to kill them. Obviously tries to use his powers to kill them all, but he runs out of juice and passes out. He's able to kill a few of them, but he doesn't quite get to do. He doesn't go on a huge rampage, and so clearly he's starting to turn against them. And maybe like around the fall of Hydra era, where all the classified stuff comes out.
Right.
They're not leaked out, by the way. Like they're like off the books. They don't. As far as anyone's concerned, the mutants don't exist at all.
Oh, okay.
But, like they just don't exist. Hence why like when Black Widow leaks all the files, no one knows about them still. They're so deep under that, like no one knows about them. Only very small personnel knows about them. Also, they all have, because of the gene, their aging is decreased, or is like longer. So like why Magneto isn't like 79 when he gets brought in like 2023 post Endgame.
Yeah.
Their aging's all kind of messed up. Wolverine, that's like that normally, but like so Magneto looks like he's sort of like mid-50s when we meet him in present day.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it can be weird if it's like just an 80-year-old man that's not as threatening. So yeah, so they're just kind of doing that for years and years. And with Charles Xavier, who's one of the only other mutants to be... There's obviously a couple every now, like Scarlet Witch and stuff, but the way Charles Xavier's activated is his comes from a car accident. So his is older, so he's like 19. And he's like he's in like a big, terrifying car accident, like a near-death one.
Mm-hmm.
And his powers are activated there, and he saves his life. He comes out completely unharmed, and so his powers are activated there, and he kind of acts more of a. He doesn't really do much with his powers. He kind of just stays hidden because they're not. He sort of feels ashamed of it almost because he doesn't know what it is, and he doesn't want to go public with it because he's scared of what people would do or what like the government would try and do with him. And so, but he's able to basically use it as his own gain. So, because he's from a rich family anyway, but he works almost like a human lie detector. So he can sort of read one person's mind at a time, because they're not super strong. So he can sort of hear one or two people at a time, but any more than that, and it's just like static noise. So he can like hear it, but he can't make out what they're saying. It's like a radio almost. You can kind of tune it to one person, but everyone else is it's like inaudible.
So, right, yeah.
So he's basically given reason why he wouldn't do anything through any of the big events in Marvel so far, because he just isn't like strong enough to do anything. He's just basically just a guy who can sometimes hear your thoughts, but not really. You can hear one person's thought at a time, which isn't. I mean, telepaths aren't exactly needed when they're fighting Thanos, so that explains why he doesn't pop up then.
Mm-hmm.
Or with like Civil War and stuff, because he's never used his powers for anything outside of his own personal gain, so no one knows he has powers besides him, hence why he doesn't have to sign up for the Sokovia Accords. I know my timeline's jumping around like mad as well, I've just realised that.
Yeah, no.
I'm just bouncing back and forth. I hope this makes sense.
You kind of got me, like the last bit I'm completely lost at.
We can start again if you want.
No.
I can shove it down.
It's totally fine. Right, so you lost me when we reached, where is it? I'm trying to remember now. It was the part where, when you said, okay, so now we're jumping from, fuck's sake, what was it? Oh my god. I can't remember. Oh, right. Hydra doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was like in the present day. Once Black Widow released the records, no one knows that no one knows that what's it called? The mutants exist.
The mutants exist.
That's where you lost me.
Okay.
Afterwards, I was like, what is going on?
Okay. So the way the mutants work is when they're captured in the 40s, and throughout actually the 40s and 60s.
Yes.
Because they know that they're so valuable as assets because of their strength and their abilities.
Yes.
They don't want to make anyone aware of them because they know if anyone foreign. Any foreign nations got a hold of that information, then they would obviously want to get those mutants. And obviously if the government knows, it becomes kind of a weird sort of iffy thing, especially during like the 60s and 70s when people aren't exactly for war, and having these group of people who are used against their will as living weapons is kind of dodgy morally wise.
So are they just letting the mutants run free at the moment, just like pretending?
No, they're hidden in like military compounds. They spend their lives in military compounds.
Okay.
They officially don't exist. They don't have any record of them existing.
Right.
They're very like off the grid. Only like a handful of people know they exist, but there's no evidence of them existing, so no one can prove it.
Okay.
Obviously Hydra knows stuff about the military, but they don't know that either. And they have little bits, but they know of Magneto vaguely from the 40s. But they don't know what happened to him after. Yes. So as far as they know, there was a kid in Auschwitz who could move metal with his mind. Then he disappeared one day, and we have no clue where he is or who he is.
Oh, wow, okay.
He's about as far... Obviously, Logan Wolverine exists in the sense of, like, in Japan, he's a sort of, like, folklore. But no one knows if he's a real person or not. Obviously, the only people who thought he was real are now they've told their grandkids about it, but they don't know. And the only person who actually saw him in person is dead. So,
yes,
and the other ones are basically just the same. Like there are people who know vaguely of them, but it's more hearsay than anything official or anything you can prove.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how they exist. And then obviously, they're just on a military compound, and then whenever they have a mission for them, they just ship them out to fight and then bring them back.
Oh, okay, like with supervision and stuff. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So like Magneto gets sent off to like go kill a Russian official or something in the Cold War, and he just goes in and kills them, and they can't prove there's no bullet wound. He just like choked on he choked on a bit of metal in his food or something.
That's really cool. I love it when you use stuff like when it involves there is no actual way to prove that any of the mutants would do something like that. It's just all accidental, and that's kind of I'm guessing from here on out. Then it's more than just hearsay. There are more whispers about the mutants, and
it becomes like a rumor of like there are people who can do these things because like they start finding like maybe there's a conspiracy theory about it. Where people are like, oh, there's a bunch of these people who are enemies of the U.S. government who have been found with like mysteriously died. Like one guy, like his filling fell out and he choked on it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how does that work? Or like a guy had like a metal, like he had like a necklace on and it choked him on.
Mm-hmm.
And like people with like earrings and stuff, it's like gone inside their ear and crushed them and like stabbed into their brain. Like stuff that's like, that doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense, but a doctor would obviously, when a doctor says how they died...
But you'd make excuses for it,
Yeah. I think, do you know what I think would be kind of cool? If, like... these people kind of had their own kind of fake EMTs on the use or something like that, being like, yeah, I'm sorry it was a hard time.
Yeah.
Obviously, these are actually people working, like, against, different foreign governments and things like that. I think it'd be kind of cool if they had stuff like that, like, just pretend.
Yeah, I agree.
Like,
it's just a big cover-up the whole time, yeah.
Yeah, like, no one else knows, but obviously we know, but they don't know. Like, that stuff is kind of cool. If you could implement that somehow... that would be amazing.
Yeah. I think, and like you could have like, I think it'd be a really cool idea as like a show to kind of like show like over time, like they kill like maybe like JFK got close and so they sent Magneto to kill him. Hence where like the bullet comes weirdly because he shot it. He didn't shoot the bullet. He didn't shoot the bullet. He didn't shoot the bullet. He just threw a shard of metal into his head or like a bullet or something.
Mm-hmm.
But Magneto did it, which is why the bullet was weirdly. And like maybe like with KGB. Infiltrated the US government. Wolverine killed a bunch of them,
You're just
or
having
like
you're just having like loads of freaking assassinations that happen in real life.
basically, yeah. So you have like a bunch of like big assassinations all happened because the mutants were there, and this group of mutants were killing them. A lot of it is Magneto because he's like the most versatile, but Wolverine does a lot too. But obviously Wolverine's a lot hard to cover up when you've got a big stab wound in your side.
Yeah, a massive like slash mark across your chest or across your
neck. And like the other mutants have powers that work like that too. So
yeah.
But I thought the bigger one was obviously JFK is killed by Magneto because that seems like the easiest one to do.
That's a big one. And also if like say like the US government or the military were using it to kind of go after other other presidents and stuff. Do you know one really weird one is the the Prime Minister of Sweden, wasn't it? Like he got assassinated years ago and no one still knows to this day what happened. So that'd be like kind of another crazy mystery. That
could be, because one of the mutants went and killed him, Yeah, because it could have been Wolverine and just walks up to him and
exactly, because the weird thing is that they did have a suspect, but he wasn't it. Yeah. Like he was the only ever suspect. So like
you could have a mutant. You could have a mutant that's invisible. You could even throw Mystique on that team. That would work. Really? Mystique, because she can shapeshift. I think Mystique would work for that. You could have her emerge in the 60s, so she's a little younger than the other two or the other group.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to, you know what? Fuck it, right? We'll make the team. So we'll say Colossus is the Russian one.
Yeah.
So he's the big powerhouse. Mystique's another one. That's 4, and she's obviously camouflaging people, so she can go and maybe when Stalin was killed, she shapeshifted into one of the Russian officials.
Of course,
and was quite integral in getting him killed. And yes, so these just enemies of the state and people they see as threats, and then the mutants are dispatched to go kill them.
Oh my god, I
think that'd be cool, and it'd be a cool thing to do history as well. Obviously, that's always a fun thing I think with mutants, especially, is seeing alternative versions of history with them involved.
Yeah, like
and I think
I think that's kind of, it doesn't make it feel very. You don't want it to feel very MCU-ish. Like we had a discussion earlier where you were like, do you feel like the MCU are getting way too similar in trait?
Okay, so where we left off, the alternate history thing, right?
Yes, the tour.
Right, yes. History. So throughout history, obviously, these group of mutants have been killing people secretly. Mm-hmm. Then you obviously get to the MCU now. In the Avengers 2012, as we've seen in Endgame, the Avengers weren't the only people in New York fighting.
Mm-hmm.
The mutants are also there at that point, and like the Ancient One, you don't know they're there. So they're hidden very much in New York, but they're more there to save people.
Yeah.
And they're kind of supposed to be hidden, so they sort of drop them in, and there are people buried in the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
It's they're using them to open, to basically get people out from there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of their job, the basically damage control, but they're sort of explicitly made to not be anywhere in sight of huge groups of people.
Yeah.
So people can see them, but cannot prove that they exist.
Okay.
And so that's kind of where they appear. In The Winter Soldier, when Hydra's falling, when Black Widow leaks all the information, the word gets out of the boy in Auschwitz, but that's it. They don't. So the conspiracy theory, which has been building for decades and decades and decades, gets a bit of a fire when they go, oh my god, there was this kid in Auschwitz who could move metal. Is there a chance he's still alive, and is there a chance he's the one responsible for all of this?
Yes.
So start to put the pieces together. I think the conspiracy angle is really cool, and I do kind of think that I would have liked to see a Disney Plus show, especially now that they've got more adult content on Disney Plus. A Disney Plus show where it was these group of conspiracy theorists are going through, trying to piece together all these weird things to try and find out who the mutants are, and obviously at the end they find out who the mutants are.
Right.
Kind of like that show Utopia on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
If you've seen that. So kind of I thought that was a cool idea. And it kind of breaks from that MCU mold.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so we get to obviously they're not found out in the Hydra files because the most they get is they find a little bit about Magneto, but again, no proof, so they're just a conspiracy.
Yeah.
Then we get to the Sokovia Accords in 2016. Now there's the Registration Act. Charles Xavier, as I've mentioned, that isn't part of that because he's never used his powers in front of anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't register because he's not a superhero. The mutants are not classed in that because the people who know who they are, because they covered them up so well, they cannot have them on the Sokovia Accords.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just exempt from it because they're classified as military personnel. Well, they classify them as weapons essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not so legally speaking, they're not actually people, so they don't have to register.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of another moral thing of like they're not actually people, which plays into that kind of idea of why the mutants don't like humans and especially the authority figures.
Yeah.
So yes, to cover calls, they skip that. Then when Infinity War rolls around, again Charles Xavier doesn't fight for obvious reasons. The group of mutants are on Earth. They don't go to space. They don't know Wakanda, or they know Wakanda exists, but the military aren't willing to put them in Wakanda because they'll get found out. And where they're like, yeah, we could, but like they've probably got it in Wakanda. They don't need these like 5 guys who are good for killing like compounds of people, but not great at fighting giant armies of monsters.
Yeah.
So, because again, their powers are limited. It's like Wolverine can't just tear through all those people because if he gets hurt too badly, he could die, and even if he gets hurt moderately, he can't die because of adamantium, but he's going to be out for a long time. So as soon as he gets hit majorly, he's out of the fight and Magneto can only do so much before he passes out too, and the same with the others. Like Colossus can go metal, but it's not as dense as it is in the comics, so he's kind of easier to break and beat.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Mystique and other guys. So basically, they're not powerful enough to where they're like, we cannot send them to Wakanda because the risk of us being found out and the repercussions that will come from finding out we have these people and have had these people for decades.
Yeah.
Their powers are not strong enough to where that is worth the risk. So they're just kind of left to like pick up pieces of while the Infinity War, when everyone's looking at, the Avengers are fighting Thanos, they're like, okay, well, it's just time to kind of knock off some political opponents with these guys. So they can just sort of act more lucidly. However, when the snap happens at the end of Infinity War, that's when everything changes. So the snap hits, and as established in Wandavision, the Infinity Gems heighten Wanda's powers. They sort of supercharge them. And using the theory that Wanda is a mutant, not a witch. I mean, I know she's a witch in Wandavision, but you could make the excuse she's a mutant, right?
Yeah, you kind of can.
Yeah. Because, like, there's sorcerers, which are magic, but neither her nor Agatha have a sling ring from Doctor Strange, so they're not sorcerers, so they are more likely to be mutants than magic characters.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so like with Wanda's supercharged, the same thing happens. So when the snap happens, well, half the people disappear, obviously, but all the people with dormant X genes, suddenly, the power of those gems bring those genes out. For everyone who's already had theirs triggered by their traumatic event, which also, I'll get to that in a minute, so like Magneto, Wolverine, Mystique, Colossus, and whoever the first person is, the group of mutants, and Charles, all their powers just get supercharged, so Wolverine suddenly becomes invincible, as he's in the comics. He can take, he can take like a bullet to the head and he's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Magneto's suddenly insanely powerful. There's no longer like that give and take. He can just do whatever he wants. Same with Colossus, his skin is now unbreakable. Mystique they're all now superpower. They're all now to the level they are in the comics. They're all hugely powerful.
Yeah.
So naturally they're like, well, now we can kill you all. We're gonna leave, and because of the snap, half of them disappear. So they all escape. They all run off into wherever. So they've all left now. They're out. They're going to be out in the open now, which will lead into how the next 5 years will sort of bring mutants in. Charles Xavier, his powers emerge, and because his powers suddenly go from where he sort of hears a little bit, he sees a person at a time, he can now hear like 3 billion people's voices in his head screaming. All their pain just floods into his brain, and obviously because he's not used to it, he just immediately, the pain is overwhelming. And let's say he's at his mansion, and he's maybe up top, or he's doing something higher up, and the idea is he falls and just destroys his spine. So he's broken his back, he's now in the wheelchair. And that's caused by the snap just overloading his brain, causing him to fall and break his back.
Yes.
So it kind of sort of establishes where they're going to be. And this happens down with the snap being a traumatic event for people, although people who don't get snapped away, their genes, if they have the X gene, are now brought in, so all their gene gets activated, so now they've now got the mutant powers. With the energy of the stones, they then get supercharged immediately. So now all the X-Men everyone's now got their powers and stuff. It's like Nightcrawler suddenly can teleport, and then the Infinity Gem or the Infinity Stone energy then makes his skin turn blue, and like the tail grows and stuff. With Beast, he's a scientist, and like his feet grow, and like he gets the Beast powers, like the standard. I won't give him the blue. I want to make the blue the serum. But let's say like he gets his powers done. Same with Cyclops and stuff. He's at school and like his eyes start to burn, and he can shoot like lasers. He can shoot a laser, and then suddenly it's like he's like at school, and like they disappear, and then he can shoot like a little laser, and it suddenly just explodes out of his eyes. It blows like a huge hole in the roof.
Yeah.
It's like when like Jean Grey's at school, and suddenly like the whole classroom just flips upside down. And it's like everyone's powers are just exploding all at once. Like Storm, suddenly there's suddenly a storm in the village she's in, and just everything, it just all explodes at once.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that'd be cool visually. So like, yeah, it's like maybe Angel, like his wings burst out as like his thing. Like, so like he starts levitating off the floor, and then suddenly his wings just burst out of his back and stuff. So I thought that'd be a cool way. So basically, all these people just exploding in powers. There's like characters who are on fire, so someone just bursts on fire and stuff like that. Iceman suddenly he just freezes up. So that's kind of so everyone supercharges, and over the next 5 years, mutants become a new thing. Now it isn't mentioned in Endgame because none of the Avengers are really care. Like, it's not a thing. They're not keeping up to date on what's going on in the world, are they? So you could make excuse because they're too focused on Thanos to not think about the mutants.
Mm-hmm.
Now you could make the argument like War Machine and Okoye know about the mutants, but don't either tell Black Widow and she doesn't care, or don't tell her. So the next 5 years, Logan is kind of going back into his past. You could do a similar thing with Winter Soldier with Wolverine, where they've wiped his brain every time. So then you have him regaining his knowledge, regaining his memory, learning about his past again. Magneto's off, just wrecking havoc, and stuff. He's just hunting down like old remnants of the wars and stuff. Charles spends the next 5 years because now he can hear everyone. He's now looking for mutants. He's now trying to find mutants. So he finds like Cyclops and Beast and Angel and Iceman. He finds the like original 60s X-Men team.
Yeah. And
then you kind of set in, and then that's how you build the X-Men. You have Charles' group of X-Men characters. You have Magneto. Then he starts finding new mutants. A lot of mutants, and he starts building the Brotherhood, and so those 5 years you start building the X-Men universe. So when we get to the end game, when the blip happens, everyone comes back, and because the energy is reversed, suddenly these people, there's now double the amount of mutants.
Oh, that's all the people who got
brought back. Some of them are also people with the X-Men. Suddenly they then get picked up, so then more mutants start popping up.
Yeah. And
because post Endgame, Wandavision hasn't touched it because Wandavision's set in a very small part, and Far From Home is set a year later, or like 3 months later. So at this point, you could have mutants properly in the universe and have it at the same time.
Damn!
And so that's how I bring the X-Men in, is through the snap and the blip. The energy of the Infinity Stones is established in WandaVision, supercharges your powers. And so all these people just pop up after the snap, and a huge, like one of the repercussions of the snap and the blip is, you brought everyone back, but you also made like half the population superpowered. Is the Sokovia Accords going to have to accumulate all of those people? Are you even going to be able to get all those people? Well, there you go. That's another thing of how they're going to work the Sokovia Accords round mutants, because now anyone could be a mutant. Anyone could be a superpowered person.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
Because no one knows. Or it takes a traumatic event to trigger it. The Infinity Stones triggered everyone's. So now like billions and billions of people are all superpowered.
Oh my god.
So yeah, that's my basic that's my intro into the universe. In terms of like where I'd go, I'd want to do an Xavier team, the Brotherhood of Mutants, and that's the main conflict. I want Wolverine separate for the time being. I want Wolverine to kind of be on his own, and he kind of gets brought into the X-Men later on. Mm-hmm. And obviously I want like Colossus. I do want to introduce characters from all over. So like I think Deadpool's going to be worked in differently. I think Deadpool's just going to kind of been shoved in. I think he's going to get shoved in through the multiverse of madness.
Oh god.
They're just going to have him kind of get brought over, which could be fun with him being like he seems like the rebooted Wolverine. He makes jokes about how because I think they're going to cast a shorter actor to play Wolverine, because Wolverine's shorter in the comics. I think they're going to have like Deadpool come over from the multiverse.
It would make
see
sense
like this new shorter this shorter, wider Wolverine and like make jokes about how he's shorter and stuff. And same with like the new character, so all the new cast, he like jokes about how many times they've recast all these people. And so there is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you could build like X-Force and stuff, and you can build up all these new teams. You can build new characters. You can like I would love to see Storm and Black Panther. I mean, they can't happen obviously because of the really tragic passing of Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah.
But you could work Storm into the Black Panther films. She could be a part of those.
Like
I don't think
maybe a part of the series, because apparently they might be making a Black Panther series. That might work out well.
I think she would, because as much as I like Storm, I think in terms of the X-Men, she's cool on the team. But I like Storm so much. I think Storm could carry her own stuff, and I think she'd work really well with the Black Panther cast.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd be a cool thing because obviously in the comics she marries Black Panther, and so I'd like to see her as part of that. Maybe she could be the cross between the two, and sort of she brings... Because there's obviously going to be mutants in Wakanda, right?
Yes.
So you could have her lead a team of mutants in Wakanda or be part of the Wakandan group, and she kind of creates their own X-Men force.
Oh, shit.
So that'd be cool.
Sorry,
You right? You gotta go.
Sorry, I've literally got to head off in a minute.
Alright, it's cool. We can finish up there.
Okay, cool beans.
I'm pretty much done. Alright, cool. Well, that's the end, I guess.
Oh my gosh, that was incredible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let us know what you think about the idea of the mutant delving into the MCU. I mean, I think I like the idea of taking a history tour with the X-Men mutants. I'm really on board with that one. And I loved hearing what Jack thought, because obviously this is your expertise. I'm a Marvel fan, but Jack reads the comics, so he knows everything.
I've been reading them since I was about like 5. I started reading them, so
yeah, exactly.
Good like 19, not 19, more like 15 years of reading, which is not much compared to the guys who have like 30 plus. But I've not been alive 30 years, so
there we go. He's probably gonna be one of those people who will be with the comics at like 30 something.
Look, they're big business. Comic book movies are only getting bigger.
There you go. So thank you everyone for listening to this bonus episode of the Hollywood Fixers. I've been Kudzai with
Jack.
Oh, and he sounds enthusiastic at the end.
I know, right? Oh yeah.
Please leave a like. Follow us on social media. We'll probably plug it in below.
We'll chuck it on the screen.
We'll see you guys later. Peace.
Cool. Peace.